Hi, I recently watched Johnny Harris's video, Why People Blame America for the War in Ukraine, and I couldn't stay silent. My name is Slava and I'm Ukrainian. I woke up in Kyiv from explosions, hypersonic missiles flying overhead, shrapnel tearing through homes. Like that shrapnel that's supposed to kill me. Lives destroyed in a second. Kyiv is a city of nearly 3 million people, as big, as beautiful as Los Angeles and other US cities, but in February 2022 it became a war zone. Let me say this clearly, this war isn't about NATO expansion or America, it's about Russia's obsession with control. They refuse to accept that Ukraine is a sovereign country, that they chose democracy, and that they chose freedom. This is not NATO's fault, this is Russia's aggression and a pattern they've repeated over decades. And Ukraine is just the latest target. To understand this war, we need to look at history. Russia has invaded and waged wars against its neighbors long before NATO expanded eastward. Let's start with the facts. First, Afghanistan, 1979-1989. Russia invaded Afghanistan in 1979, attempting to expand its influence in Central Asia. Over 1 million Afghan civilians were killed and millions more were displaced. This war had nothing to do with NATO or the United States. It was about Soviet expansionism. Second, Chechnya, 1994, 1996, 1999, 2009. Chechnya, far from the NATO's borders, became the target of brutal Russian wars. Russia destroyed Grozny, killing tens of thousands of civilians in its campaign to suppress Chechen independence. This was not about NATO. This was about Russia refusing to let Chechnya determine its own future. Third, Moldova, 1991-1992. In the early 90s, Russia supported separatism in Moldova, leading to a breakaway region of Transnistria. Moldova, a small, peaceful country, wanted independence after the Soviet Union collapsed. Russia intervened militarily, creating a frozen conflict that still exists today. Fourth, Georgia, 1991-2008. In the 90s, Russia supported separatists in Abkhazia and South Ossetia, leading to the occupation of 20% of Georgian territory. In 2008, Russia invaded Georgia outright, claiming it was protecting the regions it had already destabilized. This had nothing to do with NATO. It was Russia asserting dominance over its neighbors. These are just a few examples of Russia's aggression. The pattern is clear. They invade, occupy, and destabilize countries to maintain control, and now they're doing it to Ukraine. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, it wasn't because of NATO. It was because Ukraine chose freedom over control. They couldn't stand that 40 million Ukrainians were looking toward Europe, choosing democracy and rejecting Russia's influence. If Russia truly feared NATO, they would focus on building defenses on their own territory, not turning my country into a wasteland of burned cities and shattered lives. With this shrapnel, this war isn't about NATO expanding to Russia's borders. It's about Russia expanding into ours. There is a dangerous narrative being spread that NATO or the United States is to blame for this war. This is Russian propaganda, plain and simple. If people believe it, they ignore the real aggressor. Russia invaded Georgia in 2008. They annexed Crimea in 2014. They propped up separatist movements and invaded countries again and again. Blaming NATO lets them continue this pattern unchecked. As a Ukrainian, I can tell you this. We chose freedom. We chose democracy. And if we choose to join NATO, this is our decision, not Russia's. Ukraine is a sovereign nation, and Ukraine has the right to decide its own future. What Russia fears isn't NATO. It's the idea that their neighbors can thrive without them. They fear the collapse of their influence, their empire, and they will continue to do anything to stop it, even turning their neighbors into ashes. This war is about freedom versus tyranny. It's about whether countries like Ukraine can exist without being controlled by larger power. And it's about calling out the aggressor for what they are. Blaming NATO or the United States isn't just wrong, it's dangerous. It gives Russia the freedom to keep invading, keep killing, and keep destabilizing. Ukrainians are standing strong. They fighting for freedom, for future, and for the right to live without fear of invasion. And they won't stop. Thank you for listening. Let's make sure that truth is heard and the world understands who the real aggressor is. This isn't just about Ukraine, it's about standing up to a bully and protecting the values of freedom and democracy. We're fighting for our future, and we need the world to stand with us. Ukrainians fighting for future, and Ukrainians need the world to stand with Ukraine.